Harold Smith, or Smitty as he is more commonly called by his family and friends, was a New York police officer for over 20 years before retiring from the narcotics department to New Jersey in 2007. He has been married for 19 years and has 3 children. He is a family man and a real people person. His friends never have anything bad to say about him, and they describe him as a giant of a man, and there isn't a mean bone in his body. On September 11, 2001, he was one of the first responders at the World Trade Center and showed no hesitation during that day and the days that followed to help with the cleanup. He, along with hundreds of other men and women, risked their safety every day for months to follow to help with that process. This presentation was prepared for Charles Schumer, Jennifer Loney, and interested members of Congress who wish to expand their knowledge on the bill revision that is currently in place for the many first responders who worked so hard that day. We are 9/11 Health Now, and our mission is to aid the rescue and recovery workers of the September 11, 2001 World Trade Center attacks, who are suffering due to their toxic exposures at Ground Zero. These men and women are currently not getting any support from the government if they have gotten cancer and are now facing major financial burdens from the extensive medical bills that the new bill will help alleviate. To help you get a better understanding, we will be talking about the many different aspects of that day. For example, a timeline of events leading up to and following the attacks. We will also be giving you some statistics, numbers to really give you an idea of who was affected and how many. Following that, there will be an explanation of the immediate effects it had on the workers, followed by what was released into the air and caused many of the long-term effects we are now starting to see. To finish off this presentation, we will be talking about why cancer is not currently covered on the bill and other aspects of the current bill that is in place, and a recommendation for the future. These men and women are heroes for spending long hours every day for months cleaning up Ground Zero, so we should now help them when they are needing it the most.
Tuesday morning, September 11, 2001, was just another day. American Airlines Flight 11 took off from Boston's Logan Airport at 7:59 a.m., heading for Los Angeles. 5 terrorists hijacked the plane and flew it into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. Soon after, United Airlines Flight 175, also heading for Los Angeles, was hijacked and flown into the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. Planes with long flights were intentionally selected for hijacking because they would be heavily fueled. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed first after burning for 56 minutes from the fire caused by the impact of United Airlines Flight 175, which killed 614 employees in the building. The North Tower collapsed shortly after at 10:28 a.m. after burning for 102 minutes, killing 1,402 employees in the North Tower. These attacks on the World Trade Center towers resulted in the largest concentrated emergency service response in American history. At least 100 EMS units and dozens of private ambulances raced to the site, helping the wounded to hospitals. More than 2,000 NYPD and Port Authority police officers secured the area, searched the towers, and rescued survivors. But the response was, first and foremost, a fire department's operation. In a standard single alarm fire, a total of 6 units, which consists of 3 engines, 2 ladders, and a battalion chief would respond. A 5-alarm fire brings 44 units. September 11th was on the order of 5 5-alarm responses, involving more than 214 FDNY units, which consists of 112 engines, 58 ladder trucks, 5 rescue companies, 7 squad companies, 4 Marine units, dozens of chiefs, and numerous command, communication, and support units. Looking just at the first responders, 343 firefighters lost their lives that day. Since then, 345 firefighters have lost their lives caused by cancer. 23 NYPD officers lost their lives that day, and 45 have lost their lives from cancer since then. The total number of casualties on this unforgettable day is 2,977. Without our help, the number of casualties caused by cancer will soon exceed the total number of casualties that occurred that day.
When the buildings finally fell and the full enormity of what had happened reached us in our homes and in our places of business, first responders charged to the massive pile of debris looking for survivors and putting out fires. This was at a point when nobody was sure if the attacks were over, yet these heroes moved onto the pile anyway. New York City health authorities told Congress they estimated approximately 91,000 rescue and recovery workers and approximately 300,000 building occupants, residents, and passerbys were exposed to the vaporized remains, including pulverized concrete, asbestos, glass, and lead, from the two 110-story towers. Among the responders who had no symptoms before 9/11, 61% developed respiratory symptoms while working at Ground Zero. 1/3 of them showed a measurable reduction in lung capacity. 2.5 years later, most of the responders interviewed still had symptoms of reduced lung functionality and respiratory issues. Workers that arrived at Ground Zero during the first hours and days after the collapse were found to have the worst medical problems. Heroes like Harold Smith were treated on site for respiratory distress due to the inhalation of particles at Ground Zero. Harold Smith, as a New York police officer, saves lives every day. It was his job, his passion, his duty. So on September, hundreds were on site to help with the rescue efforts, and thousands more helped to clean up after this disaster. Now, many of these men and women are coming down with different kinds of cancers associated with the chemicals they inhaled that day and the many days after. These men and women, who worked so unselfishly for this country, are now finding it difficult to get assistance from the government for their medical bills. Though we don't know the actual cost of Harold's medical bills, we do know the average amount paid to fight kidney cancer is about $100,000. The price he and his family paid during his fight was immeasurable. These heroes were not thinking about the long-term effects of their efforts. They did not hold back to ensure they were safe. Embodying the best of what it means to be an American, the best of what it means to be human, they acted, and at a time when we needed them to. They were there when we needed them most. We can let them know they do not stand alone, that we appreciate and value their sacrifice.
As the first building collapsed, a cloud of particles containing cement, dust, glass fibers, lead, and without a doubt the most toxic, asbestos, as well as many other hazardous materials, consumed the lower Manhattan area. This cloud entered nearby offices, schools, and the residential area nearby and remained at the site to form what we now know as Ground Zero, which is a 6-story pile that contains these toxic materials that burned intermittently for more than 3 months as crews rushed to clean up. Included in this list is asbestos, a known cancer-causing material. During the conditions of 9/11, with the combustion of jet fuel, the asbestos would have turned to dust and become airborne, leaving these individuals within the area exposed to this very exotic and dangerous chemical. With the brave men and women on site inhaling these hazardous materials, we are now beginning to see a rapid increase of chronic disorders such as loss of lung function and cancer. The New England Journal of Medicine published a study that found exposure to asbestos-laced dust caused abnormal lung function. From March 2000 to September 2008, the study tracked the lung function of crew members, and the results were more than 90% of those workers on site lost 10% of his or her lung function. Lung cancer today leads the most number of deaths in both men and women, accounting for about 30% of all cancer deaths. What is most shocking is that close to 1,000 members of fire crews or emergency response teams had to be relieved of duty due to permanent respiratory disability from bronchitis or asthma triggered by the dust and debris. Overall, workers at the scene are experiencing 10 to 12 years worth of loss in lung function over a single year, which is beginning to raise concern for the health of those brave men and women involved in the cleanup of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The reason for cancer exclusion on the first bill was based off what scientists were originally unable to prove. Symptoms for cancer often stay hidden for years before showing up, and even then, finding a link to their cause can be very difficult. Cancers like mesothelioma caused from asbestos often don't show up for 30 plus years after exposure. Paul Loy, Vice Chairman of Environmental and Occupational Medicine at Robert Wood Johnson Health Science Institute, was quoted, "When you have such a complex mixture in an inhalation exposure that's complex, it's difficult to understand," end quote. However, with the evidence of individuals that were firsthand at ground zero beginning to experience moderate to severe cases of failing lung function, as well as more and more first responders developing cancer, like Harold Smith, change needs to be made to this bill in order to care for these brave individuals who sacrificed their life in order to help others.
You know asbestos was in there, is in those buildings, lead is in those buildings, there are the VOCs. However, the concentrations are such that they don't pose a health hazard. We're going to make sure everybody's safe.
That was former New Jersey Governor and head of the EPA, Christine Todd Whitman, stating on national television that the air quality at Ground Zero was safe, even though test results hadn't been returned yet. In the days and months that followed the attacks of 9/11, our country went through many grave consequences of the attack. New York Financial District, as well as all air traffic across the nation, was shut down for several days. You cannot shut down the largest economy in the world without grave consequences. In an effort to salvage what they could, government officials lied about the air quality at Ground Zero so that the financial district could be opened faster. They put the health and safety of first responders, people that worked in the area, and cleanup crews at risk, all for money. Shortly after the attacks, the 9/11 healthcare bill went into effect. This bill had a very narrow scope, and it only covered people that were in the Twin Towers themselves or the adjoining buildings within 96 hours of the attack. As we all know, though, cleanup at Ground Zero went on for many months. When our nation was in its greatest need, our first responders came to its aid. They acted with courage, and they acted selflessly and without hesitation. Now it's our turn to help them. The 9/11 healthcare plan expired in 2003. It didn't cover many of the problems that were caused at Ground Zero. It did not cover respiratory illnesses or cancer. The bill we propose does cover these things. It would cover all the victims from 9/11, including the cleanup. It also would include medical monitoring to catch these diseases at their onset, so they don't get worse, and so treatment will be cheaper. These people are not asking for a handout, they're just asking for your help when they need it most. They have already proven that they would do the same for us. It is very important that we pass this bill quickly, for as we wait for legislation to go through, families such as Harold Smith's watch their family members suffer. These people were heroes to us. They did not hesitate, and we should not hesitate for them. This is why you need to pass this bill now, is to help these heroes who selflessly and courageously helped us.